India and Myanmar share a 1,643-kilometer border in 4 states of the northeast: Mizoram, Nagaland, Manipur and Arunachal Pradesh. Over the past few days, this part of the border has been creating quite the buzz in these regions, especially regarding the centre's call to fence the border and to end the free movement regime. The free movement regime allows people living in border areas to travel up to 16 kilometers inside the other country without a visa. But on the 21st of January, Union Home Minister Amit Shah, while attending the graduation parade of commandos of Assam Police at Guwahati, said that the government under Prime Minister Narendra Modi has decided to fence the entire India-Myanmar border like it has been done along the border with Bangladesh. Our government is re-examining the free movement regime provision that exists with Myanmar, and now this facility, which allows free movement, will be stopped, said Shah.
जिलों में कड़ी चौकसी हो रही है। सीएपीएफ और पुलिस का तालमेल असम राज्य की स्थापना से सबसे बढ़िया अभी दिखाई पड़ा है और तस्करी रोकने के लिए और अवैध दीवार खड़ी करने के लिए भी काम किया गया है। मैं आज असम के मित्रों को बताना चाहता हूं कि ब्रह्मदेश के साथ, म्यांमार के साथ हमारी सीमा जो खुली सीमा है, नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार ने निर्णय करा है कि भारत म्यांमार सीमा को हम बाढ़ से सुरक्षित करेंगे और पूरी सीमा पर बांग्लादेश की तर्ज पर बाढ़ लगाने का काम करेंगे। और म्यांमार के साथ हमारा फ्री आवाजाही का जो एग्रीमेंट है, ये एग्रीमेंट पर भी भारत सरकार पुनः विचार कर रही है और अब आने जाने की ये सहूलियत को ही भारत सरकार बंद करने जा।
The announcements have created quite the stir amongst the leaders of these 4 states, with Mizoram Chief Minister leading the voice opposing the move to scrap the free movement regime. In Nagaland's aspect, a few voices echoed the call of the union government, while the majority of civil society organizations and Naga national political groups have opposed it. Among the prominent leaders of Nagaland who supported the move was Imkong L. Imchen, advisor for IPR in soil and water conservation, who said that he completely supports the re-examination move of the government of India to scrap the existing free movement regime between India and Myanmar. Imchen said there is no clear-cut boundary demarcation between India and Myanmar, and that drug trafficking as well as the insurgencies of the northeast mostly comes from the Southeast Asia through these routes.
To remove the free movement regime.
Sir, but that
I
will
fully
be...
support.
Okay, all right. Sir,
I fully support, okay?
Okay, but why, sir?
Huh?
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
A nation, a country, a sovereign nation is determined when there is a clear-cut boundary demarcation. A state is fully determined only on the basis of having a recognized boundary between the neighboring states. India as a sovereign state, we too need a sovereign demarcated boundary with a neighboring country. The drugs trafficking, which is a very serious dimension in our social life, is mostly coming from Southeast Asia through this route. Besides the insurgencies of the Northeast.
Further, Nagaland's Minister for Tourism and Higher Education, Tamjanim Nalong, on being asked about the central government's move to end the FMR regime, said that the centre's aim was to curb the menace of drug trafficking and crime, which are major issues of the porous border, and that Nagaland's leaders were wise enough to speak to the centre.
Whatever our central leaders have said, central leaders always say which is logical, and like what we have also heard from our Honorable Deputy Chief Minister Y. Patonji, proper consultations will be held, just like our Northeast NEDA Chairman and Chief Minister of Assam, Hemanta Da, has said that consultations will be held, and knowing the geographical and the traditional aspect of cultural boundaries which are there internationally also. I think the wisdom of our leaders in Delhi and the wisdom of our leaders in the region will always come together and it will be solved. It's not a problem. Kindly don't take it like, now it's going to be fenced, so our family, relative, everything. No, it's not like that. Our central leaders are wise enough to understand the geographical demarcations from where what happens. Actually, it's the endeavor to stop crime, endeavor to stop drug peddling and influx of drugs and many other things. So it is not just like tomorrow everything will be gate closed and not like that. So let's take time. Our Honorable Chief Minister Shinefrio is there, Honorable Deputy CMs are there, Hemantada is there. So they'll be consulting with Delhi, and Delhi will be consulting obviously with the regional leaders, the region's leaders. So I think in that way it should not be a problem.
And now joining me on this special newsroom, we've got our associate editor, Al Muli, who will be speaking to us more on this contentious free movement regime and the impacts that fencing the Indo-Myanmar border would have on this northeastern region, especially the 4 states. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on this special newsroom. Before we actually get into the main contentious issue of the fencing of the border and especially the ending of the free movement regime, so could you please shed some light as to what this free movement regime was and what was the genesis and how and why was it brought about?
Yeah, Akivi, I think this issue is starting to escalate now, especially with the Manipur issue ongoing. Traditionally, the Naga people, for instance, who are living along the border between India and Myanmar, they have not really recognized, they don't recognize, in fact, they don't really consider it a boundary of any sort of form, because traditionally from the ancestral times of their communities, from their time on, they have always insisted that the border areas, they are not 2 different regions, they are not 2 different countries, but basically a single whole contiguous area there. So now in this space, because they don't recognize, let's say, the administrative mechanisms of either countries, and because they don't recognize the sovereignty of 2 different countries, they have always felt that a singular region was an administrative space for the people they share traditional kinships with Akivi.
Yes.
That means they set up their own economic frameworks there, they set up their own marketing centers there, and they set up their own socio-cultural conversations that revolve around their existence as a single people there. So it's basically a country within a country between 2 countries, Akivi. So now when the border trade agreement between Myanmar and India was established in 1994, the whole idea was to leave out these border areas where the 2 peoples, meaning let's say the Nagas on Nagaland side and the Nagas on Myanmar side, it was a recognition of their unique identity, in that they were a people of not 2 countries or 2 regions, but that they were a singular people, a common community within themselves. So the border trade agreement in 1994 recognized these Akivi.
Yes.
So what the government was doing was that it was to establish some kind of a trading framework in the border area, so that first, of course, economic and sustenance activities could be undertaken
Yes.
through the opening of the border.
Yes.
And second, it was to, interestingly, we'll be getting to this point, second, it was to safeguard what the government said was the cultural capital of the Nagas, not like Nagas of Manipur, Myanmar, and Nagas of India, but Nagas as a whole.
Yes.
In the border area. So now that was the border trade agreement between Myanmar and India in 1994. Then as a development and evolution of this, in 2017, the government of India instated the free movement regime, which was an upgrade of the free trade movement, the border agreement between Myanmar and India in 1994. It had a lot of changes and amendments made to it, and basically it was an upgraded version of the first one. So when the free movement regime was instated, it brought in new changes to the specifications that was given in the previous amendment. For instance, previously it was 70 kilometers for people from the Myanmar side to come into India, or let's say Nagaland. But in the free movement regime, it was reduced to 16 kilometers. You could come in or go into Myanmar 16 kilometers, and you could stay for 72 hours. So the amendments say that instead of 40 kilometers, you could now go only up to till 16 kilometers, and you could stay only for 24 hours instead of 72 hours. So that was those were some of the changes that were made in the 2017 agreement, the free movement regime. So from the free movement regime in 2017, now we are talking about removing it or completely fencing the entire border because of basically one reason, and this was a change that the government authorities in India wanted to implement before, much before the Manipur issue happened. Insurgency activities, we have all known that northeastern insurgent groups have often taken refuge on the Myanmar side of the border. So even the Naga groups have been there, the Assamese groups, the Alpha, and the Manipuri groups, insurgent groups have always taken refuge on the Myanmar side of the border. So there were some talks during those days about fencing the border, of course, and removing the free movement regime because of that. But now, because of what happened in Manipur starting May 3rd, 2023, I think the conversation has escalated to a point where policymakers at the center are actively pursuing a removal of this agreement, Akivate.
All right, so now coming to another aspect of it, I mean, when it was announced by the Home Minister that the whole of Indo-Myanmar border will be fenced, I think one of the leading voices opposing the move was Mizoram's Chief Minister Lal Duhoma, who said it will not be it is unacceptable and the Mizos will not accept it. Well, after that, there were a few discussions where even our Nagaland cabinet had gone to Delhi to meet Prime Minister and Union Home Minister Amit Shah, where they did also talk about the ending of the FMR and also fencing of the border. But now, sir, this problem is related to 4 states. So when discussions are taking place at that central level, what do you think would be the most pragmatic solution? Because in India, you've got 3 lists. You've got the union, you've got the state, and you've got the concurrent list. And when it comes to the matter of national security, that particular area or that particular division completely belongs to the center. So what do you think would be the pragmatic solution? Because Lal Duhoma, who's the Mizoram Chief Minister, had said that if the center has decided to fence the border, then the state has no authority. So what could be a pragmatic solution to this particular issue, sir?
Yeah, I think especially border security have been a very contentious issue, even with West Bengal in 2021, 2022. There was a lot of uproar when the government of India decided that we are not going to now give charge of the border security to the states. We are going to take it over. And Mamata Banerjee was there. She was furious because the Home Ministry stated that now we are going to take charge of the border security force. So I think it is understandable on the part of the Mizoram government that they could take a vehement stand on this, Akive.
Yes.
Firstly, because here, let me just broach this before we talk about the meeting with the central government here. We have to remember that I think current records say that about 250,000 to 4 lakh people, Mizo origin communities are residing in Myanmar. They are, some of them are the Raltes,
Yes.
the Mars and the Makras, who of course they don't really consider themselves people from the Mizoram origin communities because of linguistic differences here, but there are a lot of them, from 250,000 to about 4 lakh. So for them it is not just about a border or something to do with border agreements. It's not just about fencing. It is, if I may say so, it is a family issue in that sense, because you are going to break up families right there at the border. So that is one thing. Second, the fact that the Mizoram government would oppose it, but for, let's say, the policymakers in Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh or Nagaland would go, instead of opposing it or making a stand in the assembly, you have to go to the center.
Yes.
It just says that the central government is in charge of the leaders here, because why? We are in alliance with them.
Yes.
There's the BJP there, but in Manipur you have the Zoram People's Front.
Yes.
They are not with the BJP. So somehow they can take some kind of a moral courage in their standing for the people, so to speak.
Yes.
But for us, we cannot do that because our party's leaders are at the center. Our government's leaders are at the center. So instead of making a moral stand here, you have to go to the center and seek a solution with them or discuss a way out in this regard. That is second. And in regard to the third point, what might be the solution here? Frankly, Akivi, it'll be very selfish if we say, let's close the border because it is troubling Manipur.
Yes.
Because today is Manipur, tomorrow is Arunachal Pradesh. If something happens at the border that involves people from Myanmar and Arunachal Pradesh, and they say close the entire border, including the borders with Manipur, including the borders with Mizoram and Nagaland, that's going to be very selfish. And it's not just going to affect the state in question, it's going to affect thousands and lakhs of people along the 1,646 kilometers, right?
Yes.
It's going to affect millions of people there.
Yes.
So that's where you have the right recipe for disaster.
Yes.
It's not just going to be community organizations who are going to voice this out. There are going to be ethnic militant groups there, insurgent groups from Assam, Manipur, Mizoram. They're going to come up and say, hey, the problem is on your side of the border, not on our side of the border. Why are you trying to break up our families here?
Yes.
So you just close the border that touches your state, but just leave us alone. So I think the solution here is not border fencing, Akeve.
Yes.
I think the solution is to address what is happening in the state in question.
Yes.
Because before the Manipur issue happened, drug trafficking was still rampant.
Yes.
Illegal immigration was still rampant. And just because you close the border, it doesn't mean that it's going to stop. The trafficking is going to stop. Illegal immigrants are going to come in.
Yes.
And if you're going to break up the families, the problem will spread from the whole Manipur context to all the other states touching the Myanmar issue. So I think the solution here is to address whatever is going on in Manipur, let's say for now, address that first, just get a law and order situation in place first, set up community and governmental policy mechanisms, and take it forward instead of just saying let's close the border. And because what you're doing is you're taking the problems of one house, and then to seek a solution to the dispute, you are enforcing a mechanism on the entire colony.
Yes.
And that's going to be very problematic, because it's not just Manipur that's being affected here, it's affecting Arunachal Pradesh. And we have people like the Makri, the Chin, the Nokos are there, the Laisongs, the Naga people in Myanmar. So thousands of people are going to be affected. So the only solution here is just check whatever is going on in your kitchen first, and set up a policy level mechanism where you can address the issue of, because the government of India will not talk about your immigration issues, your drug trafficking, these are state issues.
Yes.
And you are using your kitchen problems to inflict your grievances on the entire colony and district. It's going to be like that. So first check whatever is going on in the state, and then let's talk about border fencing or border agreements later on, because this is not something that concerns just your state.
Yes.
It concerns 4 other states along the more than 1,600 kilometer stretch.
All right, so now talking about borders, especially India sharing its borders with other nations. In the national media, whenever we hear about border issues, it always used to relate with the line of control, which India and Pakistan, or the line of actual control, that is with China. But now, today, at least in the northeast, and especially in these 4 states of Arunachal, and if you look at Manipur and Mizoram and Nagaland, this issue is stirring quite the hornet's nest.
Right.
Even if you look back at history, I mean, when you take the state of Arunachal Pradesh, there has always been a border issue, but the border issue was never with Myanmar, it was always with China. And then now you come back to Mizoram. Mizoram always had an issue in the border, especially because Mizos accepted refugees from Myanmar, and the previous government of Zoramthanga welcomed these refugees and said, we will take care of them. Now you come to Manipur, it was slightly quiet, especially in the border areas. We had instances where there were cases of drug trafficking, especially caught around the Manipur and Myanmar border.
Right.
And when you come to the state of Nagaland, I mean, it has been quietly present, but the controversies were never too loud to alarm the center. So do you think that the recent events that are taking place in Manipur, especially the ethnic violence, and also Manipur state government's claim that foreign mercenaries might be involved, could have raked up this issue, and also the recent Myanmar army fleeing into Mizoram to take refuge? So do you think that these are some of the reasons why this issue has now raked up? And also, do you think that one of the ways the center could look at this issue could be on a region to region basis, rather than having the whole border, 1,643 kilometers border, fenced?
I think, look, let's say if you are a government that is in charge of an entire country of more than 1.2 crore people, like giving,
Yes.
the first thing you're going to think is, okay, if you've got a problem with China or Myanmar, you're not going to look at it from the point of view of Manipur.
Yes.
You're not going to look at it from the point of view of Kashmir or Kerala.
Yes.
You're going to look at national security in the context of the billions of people within a single country. And I think the Manipur issue gave a very good opportunity for the government of India to broach the issue of fencing the entire border between India and Myanmar. First thing. Second thing is, if Manipur shares about 400 kilometers border with Myanmar, giving.
Yes. Yes.
So if that issue, let's say, or drug trafficking or illegal immigrants from Myanmar, could be a starting point for the central government to start a conversation about national security, then I think that will be too short-sighted in this regard, because just a little while ago we were talking about China,
Yes.
Leh and Ladakh, and when we are talking about northeastern border fencing, we are basically talking about protecting Arunachal Pradesh from China there.
Yes.
So this is a very good opportunity for the central government to instate some kind of a mechanism that will the Manipur and Myanmar issue is just a side dish, Akevi.
Yes.
If you look at it, it's just side dish. What the center wants to do is it wants to set a boundary, saying, hey, we are a sovereign nation and you are infringing on our territory in Arunachal Pradesh. And it's not surprising that the Indo-Myanmar border touches the southmost point in Arunachal Pradesh,
Yes.
and ends in Mizoram.
Yes.
So the starting point is always in Arunachal Pradesh. If at all some kind of an issue comes up later on in military terms, let's say, it will start at Arunachal Pradesh, and it will be easier for foreign countries to compromise the border, and they could severely affect our national security. So technically what the government of India is doing is, I think they're not looking at the whole Manipur and Myanmar infiltration and immigration and drug trafficking thing. No, this is just a very good opportunity. I believe that the central government saw the Manipur issue. The central government saw it as an opportunity for them to set up some kind of a defense mechanism for the Arunachal Pradesh point, which touches right into China. I think we're talking about foreign policy here, Akivi.
All right, now coming to the local aspect of it, if you take into case of Mizoram, there are several civil society organizations that have written to the particular state government and also asking the state government to convey the message to the center about not ending the FMR and not to fence the border. And also, if you look here in Nagaland, the Naga Students Federation has outrightly claimed its opposition towards ending the FMR regime and border fencing the Nagaland-Myanmar border. So when it comes, when the center has said it is a matter of national security and it wants to protect the integrity and sovereignty of the country, and when it comes to national security, do the voices of such civil society organizations have any weightage in trying to convince the center otherwise?
I think ideally the voice of the people should matter, Akivi.
Yes.
Because when you are a country that has a history as that has a democratic capital the way India does, then ideally you should be listening to the students, to the youth, the community leaderships, because that's how your capital as a democratic country has been built on. So ideally they should have listened when the Young Mizo Association started complaining.
Yes.
When Lalduma, the chief minister, started saying, hey, no, you can't do this. When the NSF started protesting the proposal to remove the free movement regime, ideally they should have listened, but hey, Akivi, they removed Article 370 from Kashmir.
Yes.
How easy it is for them to remove a border agreement which is not even constitutionally, let's say, a statute. So ideally they should be listening, because if you look at the 2017 free movement regime between Myanmar and India, it says that the whole idea of this agreement is to safeguard the cultural capital of the people of the tribal people of either side. That means the Nagas on the Myanmar side, the Nagas on the India-Nagaland side, the Mizos on the Myanmar side. So the whole idea is not to create two separate areas and define them in two different political contexts. The whole idea was to define them as a singular people within a singular economic region. So it was to keep them together and to safeguard their cultural assimilations, their relations with people on the other side of the border, their cultural capital. So that was the objective of the border agreement, the free movement regime. So if the government actually listens to, let's say, the NSF or the Mizoram people who are protesting removal of the agreement, then ideally it should stay that way and it should not be removed in that case, Akivi.
All right, sir. I think we've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining me on this special newsroom and shedding more light as to what the free movement regime actually means and what impacts the fencing of the Indo-Myanmar border, especially in the four northeastern states, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Manipur and Nagaland, would actually, how they would impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so that was our associate editor, Alnguli, and we just heard about the complications of what could happen if the border, Indo-Myanmar border, which is about 1600 kilometers, is fenced, and also what ending the free movement regime in these four states could actually impact the people that live in this particular four regions. Well, as our associate editor has said, that it was an area where it was to keep the cultural identity of the people as a whole. So would the ending of the FMR and also with the border fencing of the Indo-Myanmar border break the families of these four states that live amongst each other and which have been living harmoniously ever since time immemorial? Well, now the only question now is when the center is planning to implement its provisions to fence the border along the Indo-Myanmar border and also to end the free movement regime. We'll just have to be patient and wait.